Welcome back to Vintage Camera Digest. Today we're continuing the Class of 1959 series and taking a look at the very first SLR from Canon, the Canonflex. So stick around. Last week we took a look at the Nikon F, a camera that dominated the professional 35mm SLR market for over a decade. And with that camera, Nikon got everything about as right as they could. But what was Canon up to? Well, Canon had been doing just fine in the 35mm rangefinder market. You may recall from last week that the company that would eventually become Nikon, Nippon Kogaku, had actually been providing lenses for the Canon rangefinders as early as the mid-1930s. So as a camera manufacturer, Canon had a few years of seniority over Nikon. But then we come to the magic year of 1959, the year both Nikon and Canon would jump into the SLR market. In hindsight, we could have voted the Nikon F as most likely to succeed. For Canon, though, maybe the best we could proclaim for their first SLR, the Canonflex, would be most unique. The Nikon F had a lot of similarities with their Nikon rangefinders. The Canonflex, though, had very little in common with any of the Canon rangefinders. It was a different animal altogether. And while the Nikon F was a hit, the Canonflex was not. Canon only built around 17,000 units of the camera before releasing an updated model, the R2000, a year later, which was the first SLR ever to offer a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. Still, even with that feather in their cap, sales would lag far behind the Nikon camera. But was it because the Canonflex was a bad camera? Personally, I don't think so. I found this camera to be as solidly built as the Nikon F, with even a few improvements over that Nikon. But I do think it found itself a casualty of questionable design. Good intentions, no doubt, but the execution was lacking. So let's take a look. The Canonflex offered a removable prism, something that they wouldn't offer again other than on the short-lived R2000 until the release of the F1 in 1971. It also features a hinged back, which makes loading film a bit easier than having to remove the entire back and then trying to find a place to put that while you put the new reel of film in. On the top right shoulder, we have probably the largest shutter speed dial ever and the shutter release button. In addition to regular speeds from 1 to 1/1000th of a second, you have T, B, and X. To use the T setting, slide this lever to the left and press the shutter. To close the shutter, just slide that lever back to the right. By the way, X-sync on this camera is 1/60th of a second. And just in front of the shutter speed dial on the front are two brackets which will mount an accessory light meter. On the front we have the self-timer, but there's no mirror lockup. But let's look at the top again. There's something missing here. The winding crank. How do you wind the film? Well, that brings us to unique design feature number one. The winding lever is actually on the bottom of the camera. Now, the winding lever design itself isn't a terrible idea. It was also used on a few of Canon's rangefinder cameras. In use, it's pretty cool. In normal shooting mode, you'll just cradle the camera in your left hand. But when you fold down the little winder lever, it sits perfectly behind the middle finger of your left hand. And once you trip the shutter, you can quickly wind to the next frame without repositioning your hands. With the normal thumb winding setup, you have to move your hand a bit to wind the film. Not a lot, but some. And with a bit of practice on this camera, it's theoretically possible to shoot a lot faster than you could with the normal type winder. But with this unique winding method comes the Achilles heel of the Canonflex, or maybe both of Achilles heels, because one, you can't mount a motor drive, and two, it gets in the way of using a tripod. Now, Canon might have thought that the speed at which you could actually use the winder would negate the need for a motor drive. I'm just guessing here and giving them the benefit of the doubt. But the tripod mounting screw is just too close to the mechanism to facilitate use of a bigger, sturdier tripod. A tripod with a small mounting plate, yeah. But is that going to be enough for pro use? Probably not. So the Canonflex has those two issues to overcome, and those two issues would have likely been deal breakers to a working pro. Even though there were only 11 lenses available for the Canonflex, and the widest was a 35mm, they did offer adapters that would let you mount the Canon rangefinder lenses. But now that we've got the negatives out of the way, let's talk about the positives. And a big positive for 1959 was using automatic diaphragm lenses that stopped down to taking aperture during exposure and immediately opened back up to full aperture to get ready for the next shot. The camera also has an instant return mirror, so there was no blackout after exposure. And the focusing screen features a split image micro prism collar. As far as I can tell, there were no additional focusing screens that you could interchange, just this one. Alright, let's go for a shoot. Today I'll be heading to the campus of Berry College in Rome, Georgia, where we'll find some really nice architecture. I'll see you there. So this morning we're out here with the Canonflex, the original SLR from Canon from 1959. We are on the campus of Berry College in Rome, Georgia. Beautiful campus, beautiful buildings, a huge campus. We've got 2 rolls of T-Max 100. Going to go through that. And if I need to go further, I've got a few rolls of Tri-X 400. I only have one lens for this camera, the 51.8. So this should be a good exercise in keeping it simple, which is what I usually don't do, but I should. All right, well anyway, let's go searching for our first shot. So today I'm using my Minolta Auto Meter 3. Got f11 at 1/250th of a second. So let's go with f8 at 1/500th of a second. Right. And this has got the funky winder on the bottom of the camera. I'm still at 1/500th of a second at f8. I'm gonna go to 1/250th at f11. Got a split image range finder focusing, makes it easy. All right, everything's sort of lit directly from the front. Let's try to find some shadows. There's some shadows over there. The building over there, we've got some shadows. It's gonna be easy to get a few rolls of film out of this, I think. We got some nice shadows going on with the tower in the back. Get some of that short lighting, add some depth. Maybe we'll get some reflection in the pool. And let's go with, I'm gonna stick at F. I'm gonna stick to F8. And that's going to give me 1/250th of a second at f8. So that's a 1/250th of a second at f8. All right, let's take a few. Get some in the reflection here. I would like to have a wider angle than 50, but that's what I've got. Still 1/250th of a second at f8. Let's also shoot it at 5.6. Yeah, so I don't know if that last part recorded, but just getting some more, some shots right through here. We've got this front facade of this building directly illuminated by the sun. We've got some shadows on the side of the building over here, which is going to give us some decent depth, I hope. Still early enough in the day that the shadows are rather directional, so that's good. Shadows are always directional, but I guess what I mean is they're not straight down, they're still at an angle. 1/250th of a second, f8. And we're gonna bracket to 5.6. Nice place out here. Probably some cool shots over here with these bikes. Let's see what we can do. All right, let's find something else. So this building behind me is nice, well lit. We got some symmetry coming out through the corridors to the side. I wish I had a wide angle lens here, but all I've got is the 50. And to be honest, I think the only wide angle lens that Canon made for this camera was the 35 2.5, and I don't have that, so I'm having to make do everything with the 50 today. We're shooting 1/250th of a second at f11. But I'm gonna go 1/500th at f8. Trying to make sure I'm symmetrical. That's the end of that roll of film, so I'm gonna change film. We'll pick up right here. All right, so we got this chair behind me, and we've got these archways across the breezeway. So, get some of that. And I'm metering at 1/250th of a second at f11, and I am doing 1/500th of a second at f8. All right, I would like to shoot a little less depth of field, but we are in the bright sun, so we don't have much of a choice. The camera goes to 1/1000th of a second, and the shallowest depth of field I can get right now is f5.6. So I guess that's better than nothing, so let's give that a try. (1/500th at f8). Still trying to go for symmetry. Let's go 1/1000 at 5.6 too. Just to say we did it. It's a nice shot up here. 1/500th at 5.6. So 1/250 at f8. So I'm sort of getting the handle of this winding mechanism. Because basically it's right where your finger would hit it. Shoot it, wind, shoot it, wind. I get what they were trying to do. So not a terrible idea, but it sort of negates the ability to have a motor drive at all. And I think that was probably the biggest deal with this camera. And the lack of lens selection at the time it was released. Like this archway, like the shadows coming in at an angle. 1/500th at 5.6. 250 at f8. Let's make sure I'm focused up right. All right. Now we'll go to 1/500th at f8. I mean 5.6, 1/500th to 5.6. All right, there's a lot to shoot around here. It's a nice place. 1/125th of a second at f4. So let's go 1/60th of a second at 5.6, and then we'll do one at f4. And let's do a horizontal just for the heck of it. All right, so before we move on from this spot, and I keep saying that, I know, but I keep seeing things to shoot. So right behind me, we've got this nice reflecting pool. We've got this building back there in the back. I mean, you can't point a camera anywhere in this place without finding 5 or 6 great shots. So I'll meter this up. I've got 1/250th of a second at f11. Let's do 1/500th of a second at f8, just for good measure. So everything's been in the direct sun so far, but I'm gonna do the shade right here. And I've got this nice doorway in the back. So it's 1/125th of a second at f4. Again, trying for symmetry. Let's go 1/250th of a second at 2.8. That looks really cool with this super wide angle lens. That reflection right there, that's what I'm gonna try for with the 50. I really hate it when I think I'm recording and I'm not. So anyway, what I got was the reflection and the sun on the building in the back. But since I've got a huge lighting difference, I've got, let's check it again. So in the shade here, I've got 1/250th of a second at 2.8, and in the back, I'm gonna have 1/250th of a second at f11. So what I did was shot for 5.6 right in the middle, and then I bracketed just a little bit. So hopefully one of those will be good. All right. I think I like this shot right here. I'm gonna go 1/250th of a second at, let's see. So we got 1/250th at f8 in the sun, and that's what I'm gonna shoot. All right, I'll have this roll of film finished up here in just a minute. I'm gonna do something right here. We've got 1/250th of a second at 2.8. So let's go 1/500th at f2. And that was the second roll. All right, let's pack up and go check it out. I probably could have shot 10 more rolls there. There seemed to be something photo-worthy in every direction. That campus is a beautiful place, so I'll have to go back sometime for another shoot. And the Canonflex, well, it's another camera I like. I sort of enjoyed using that crazy winder, and I can see how with some practice I could get good at that. I think the lens performed very well for a 60-year-old optic. Besides just the historical significance of it, the underappreciated Canonflex is a well-built, quite capable, fun camera. And if not for a few odd, but major, design quirks, it could have been a contender. But as it is, it wins as most unique for 1959. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned a little about another cool camera. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. I've got new content each week, so I hope to see you next time.